Alright, so this is going to be a walkthrough of Zenith, the single-player campaign for Unreal Tournament. But this isn't a perfect walkthrough for a couple reasons. Well, first, I didn't do all of the walkthrough. Actually, a friend did some of the recordings, and that's probably why you'll see some clips where the player is just hanging out around a bit more leisurely than usual. But also because it's pretty much impossible to not be damaged in Zenith. But having said that, though, it is on heroic mode, so there will be heroic mode boss fights, and I guess that sort of balances things out. So, also I'm going to skip through most of the cutscenes and the introduction, because that was pretty much the case in the last 3 walkthroughs I've done. But back to the recordings, the reason why I parted the work is because I really don't have a lot of time to do long walkthroughs these days and stuff, but, you know, lo and behold, there's a little window of free time, thanks to the holidays, where we can do something like this, because I think this is long overdue as a walkthrough, probably. But I think it would also be convenient to talk about some of the things that worked here and what didn't, because in the big picture, Zenith was a campaign that did a lot of things that never had really been done before, and to more formal lengths than others. But I think it would also be convenient to talk about some of the things that worked here and what did not, because in the big picture, Zenith was a campaign that did a lot of things that had never really been done, and to more formal lengths than others even. And this is something that you can go run through on a list. For example, the most extensive campaigns, Operation Apollo, 7 Bullets, and so forth, they all had their own systems of a game going on. You could almost say that there was sort of a grouping in these campaigns. One category would be ONP's campaign system, and those campaigns such as Zydia Gold, 7 Bullets, Project Xenome pretty much used that system or one derived from it. Then you had maybe the less well-known, probably less extensive Spatial Fear and Nally Chronicles systems, and although Nally Chronicles was sort of its own uniquely purposed system that sort of worked out for itself, so in a way that's different. But then you have your old school AMP system, which is basically just Unreal system with some tweaks where most campaigns lie. And then there's Zenith's system, but prior to Zenith's release, the most extensive was ONP, and to be fair, there are some aspects of ONP that are more extensive and that have things that others do not, like the scoring system or the lip sync system for the characters, which was pretty impressive, albeit a small feature of the campaign, or the campaign system. But it was kind of strange, in a sense, to see a lot of these features implemented in other places, and they somehow never seemed to end up in an Unreal campaign, or in some kind of, even in some cases, a mod for some Unreal Engine. Things like the storage system, the character modifications, the level hub, briefings, and even some storyline related features or interfaces, maybe something like the character dialogue option, the option interface, and some third-party add-ons that were never seemed to be put to good use, like Michael's screen package or Enzyme's computer package. And in terms of gameplay, the WoW-inspired boss system, the quest system, the character dialogue systems, which were not third-party, that were part of Zenith. Of course, some implementations were never completely finished, although they were certainly sufficient, and even at that level it brought something unheard of to Unreal single-player campaigns. But the weird part is that it took over 10 years for that to happen. Within 10 years, someone had the opportunity to think of all that and never did. Or at least even never implemented it, which is really the substantive part of it. And in terms of technical execution, one of the more nuanced or invisible features that, of course, didn't really go noticed was the instancing system, where a level could basically be modified based on what the player did within the map, and then the player could go to another level and a series of levels, then come back and that level is changed based on those changes within different maps. The closest thing I can think of to that was, say, the Legacy campaign, where you basically had items that, as you know, in Unreal transfer over to each map, and based on the items the player had could, go across to different parts of the map. The Zenith's instancing system was an extension of those transitions, where a mapper could pretty much do anything in terms of actor modification based on whatever they wanted instead of an item-based method of approach. And obviously, because of my participation in it, I wouldn't want to do what I did in the other walkthroughs, but I would want to point out a few things that worked, and I think what needed working on, or whatever else. So, for instance, the current mission, and for that matter the current map, made a great distinction in its creation from pretty much any other campaign. And I think of it, if it were driven more towards this kind of environment, which was a futuristic metropolis, sort of a cyber jungle, or maybe even a Deus Ex sort of pattern of look and feel, things would have been more attractive. And it was pretty much attractive anyway, in the sense that when players looked at it, they saw something new, and that drove them to look into it further. So what I mean is they drew that distinction. But I think going from an environment like this to a more conventional environment wasn't a good idea, because I think in some regards players wanted to see something like the first few maps, On and On, which was something really new in terms of environment and campaigns. The execution of these maps went pretty well in the end, and the mechanical zone, the third map, or rather the third vehicle map, was pretty crazy in terms of maintaining proper brush structure and all, because it's actually a really huge map in terms of that. And in general, a lot of these maps, which in a sense was a mishap in the long run, pushed the engine to its limits in that regard. And I'm actually pretty sure that the third level, if not one of the ones in maybe the next set, has one of the largest brush counts in Unreal Tournament mapping. Actually, the only map I've seen that had more brushes is Perihelion, which is a deathmatch map by Xander. And that one had about 6,000 brushes. Mechanical Zone and one of the ones in the next set in Mission 2 had a lot, almost 6,000, around 5,000. But anyway, I think the lacking aspect was the gameplay, and I think it could be seen most clearly in Hyperway Zero, where basically the visuals are really nice, especially for the Unreal Engine 1, or particularly for it. But it seems like a map that's pretty empty and you could easily breeze through it. And I think there should have been maybe an obstacle to get past instead of something that is nice visually, but it's sort of something that a lot of players just rush through. If there was something like maybe a twist to winding throughout the map, then it would have been a more challenging and more memorable map. I think Metamechanical Zone was probably a capitalization on that, because it basically fixed what was lacking in those maps. So it was probably the best map out of that group. It kept players more occupied and certainly wasn't empty. And actually some of the designs from that map were inspired by H.R. Geiger, who had died, I believe, less than a year prior to its creation. And maybe you can notice that some of the motifs on that map are reflective of some of H.R. Geiger's designs. But to comment on the vehicle itself and all, I think there were, and by the way, that was made by Dots, there wasn't really anyone that seemed to bother to use them in the game, though. And I think that, well, of course, O&P had a similar concept with their flight maps. The gameplay in those flight maps was smoothly executed in comparison to the first two maps in Zenith of the vehicle game type. And really, this map set or mission, because the campaign is divided into missions, had a great opportunity to do something different with vehicles, and did so, but only after one map. And at first, there was a question of what do we do with vehicles now that we have them, because it wouldn't be unique to derive it from ONP's flight game type. So again, if there was something like, or maybe if the entire set was remade to look like a mechanical zone, it would have been a lot more entertaining. Now I hope that I can maybe post these videos every week or so, and I'll try maybe to, do the recordings within this time window so that, I don't have to do them some other time when I really don't have time. So if I get the recordings done, of course, then the rest is just compiling the video, which isn't too hard. Now I think in the same way that ONP's flight game type was a little awkward to some players at first, it was sort of also a little awkward to use vehicles that you didn't really know how to use in the beginning. Or although I personally thought it wasn't that difficult, although some friends thought it was kind of difficult to handle the vehicle, and of course at first it was, but the finalized version was not very difficult to control. And actually, maybe if everyone slowed down, because maybe they were all rushing through it, it would have been a lot more easy to control the vehicle. Other than that, it was maybe part of that map set was something that people remember because it was different in the sense that not only you're having these vehicles, which you don't really have in campaigns, but also you're going through environments that you haven't really gone through.
You finally woke up, eh? We've been waiting for you for quite a while now.
So, tell me again why I'm supposed to be going down there.
Listen, we both know you owe me a little favour, right? You do this for me, and I don't care what you do. Just make sure you raise hell down there.